for you all.
Okay.
You can maybe do a little bit louder. If you're about here, it'll pick up what you need. You guys.
Should we take our masks off?
Yes.
Okay.
You can take off your masks when you come up here and then put them back on when you go down. There will be, so Kate, who's sitting right here, is going to introduce you, Lily and Charlotte, and then you guys will walk up. You can use these stairs if you want to hug him or anything afterwards.
He doesn't want that. We're
So
going
whatever
to.
you want to do, you can acknowledge or not, and then head back to your seats.
Okay.
All right. Sound good?
Yes.
You guys are going to be great.
Good morning, upper school. Welcome to the senior speeches for the class of 2022. We ask that you please silence all devices to honor our speakers today. Our first speaker today is Grayson Doninger. Grayson will be introduced by his sisters Lily and Charlotte Doninger.
I was thinking the other day about what we could say about Grayson. So I was reminiscing on all the times when my friends would ask if I had any new Grayson stories worth sharing. Charlotte and I definitely have a few that must be told.
Grayson has a strange addiction to exotic animals. There was a time when he would scream and cry when our parents would not let him get a finger monkey, an electric eel, or a snapping turtle. And he was totally serious.
There was another time in Amsterdam when Grayson absolutely insisted that he drive our little motorboat in the crowded canals. After a temper tantrum, he got to drive our boat and ended up running into a tour boat with about 30 people on board.
And then there was the time when Grayson wanted to get some candy in Chicago. He just took the car, despite being 15 years old, with no driver's permit in sight.
I guess you could say Grayson really fights for what he wants and goes after his passions with admirable assertion. Anyway, baby Quay Quay, it's time for your senior speech.
All right. Just want to thank my sisters for providing me with an introduction. I did give in to their request to introduce me, not because I had no other ideas for my speech, but because I wanted to give you all a little taste of how hard it is to be me. I am the middle child wedged between a soccer prodigy who will be skipping college to go pro and the next ambassador for the US who will finally be repairing tension with Russia. The differences in interests amongst my family have created a discrepancy in our viewpoints on varying situations, so I feel the need to present and explain why I do the things I do that seem so odd. For years, I wanted to be a veterinarian when I grew up. This aspiration was ultimately crushed when I realized there was no chance I would be able to retain the amount of motivation needed for the years of education after high school. So I started looking online for odd animals that I could keep and take care of myself. I started testing the waters with my family by bringing up the idea of getting a finger monkey. First, I asked my mom, who I had once believed to be an open-minded individual, if we could look into adopting one. If you manage to live your life without ever hearing the phrase finger monkey, I would invite you to look them up on Google. Not only are they the smallest species of monkey, but are also notorious for being aggressive with other animals and biting their owners. I was sure I had thought the idea through. I was proud to think I could be the first middle schooler to convince my parents to let me get a monkey. When my mom tried to argue about the price of the monkey, I explained there were actually ads online for free finger monkeys in Kentucky. I poured my whole heart into researching and begging my parents to just think about the idea, but they were not budging. I knew I could take care of exotic animals with ease, but my mom was stuck on the idea of me being in school and the monkey becoming her problem and financial responsibility that she wouldn't even consider the idea of starting our very own petting zoo in the basement. There were many tears shed on my side of the argument, to which I decided to end the conversation with the greatest comeback I had in years. I yelled at my mom, "You keep asking me where I'm going to get the money for his needs, but Mom, that's not important because you can't put a price on life." While deep down, I had known the finger monkey would never be coming home to stay with my not-so-welcoming family, I was caught up in the moment and hurt thinking that my life would be subsumed into boredom yet again. My next dream pet was found a year or so later, and while the monkey was in distant memories, I had recently acquired a fish tank from the McLaughlins. I did have some cool fish, but I decided that there needed to be a flair added to the monotonous lifestyle of the tank. I came across an electric eel and knew this is exactly what I needed. Another dream, which had several battles fought between me and other members of my family, but which ultimately failed. While there might not be a solid lesson in this first story, I started to realize that you should always fight for the things that you think are essential in your life. For me, the animals were not just a want, but a need in my already unique family. I saw these animals as an opportunity to experience what it was like to have something depend on you. Not that my 2 dogs and other fish weren't enough, but I needed to add something eccentric to my life. Now for a trip to Amsterdam in 2019. To give a backstory, we had been looking everywhere for a boat rental place where we could take the boat out ourselves instead of the much more cliche option of taking one of the tours. The process of finding such a business took much longer than expected and sent my younger, much moodier sister into attack mode. When we finally managed to get on a boat and start cruising the spectacular waters, I found myself in the position of captain on our family voyage. I did enjoy this position, but Charlotte was nagging to take over controls. While I can admit she was a mediocre captain, the problem was she had no sense of direction when it came to navigating the sometimes one-way canals. A slight panic started to appear on Charlotte's face, and I knew how the pressure of keeping the family afloat might affect her. I took back control because we were completely lost and found myself having to guess which turns to take. I was getting an idea of the general location where our boat was headed when out of nowhere a barge comes out from under a bridge and we collide. Just picture yourself piloting a small metal boat in the beautiful canals of Amsterdam when out of nowhere a canal boat carrying 20, if not 30 other people comes wrecking into your smaller, much more fragile vessel. The added commentary of the situation done by Lily, along with the immediate verbal attacks from Charlotte, completely hindered my ability to captain. We were stuck, and it was all their fault. I couldn't tell if the captain of the other boat even knew what had happened, but by the time I looked inside the group's cabin, everyone was staring at me. After several uncomfortable moments of my mom trying desperately to push our boat away from the touring barge, we were unstuck and moving again. It is important to throw yourself into uncomfortable situations, just as I heroically stepped in and took control of our lost boat. I stepped in to captain our vessel because I was confident that compared to the others, I was our greatest chance for survival. The last and most important story starts with a freezing winter night. I was staying with my mom, sisters, and cousins in a hotel in downtown Chicago. We'd already eaten dinner, and there was nothing to do once darkness had fallen over the city. I'd left my phone charger in the car and decided that I would go get it. My mom tossed me her keys, and I was back in an instant. I soon got a craving for a box of Mike and Ike's, so when I half-jokingly asked my mom if I could take the car to CVS to get some, I was surprised to hear her answer back with a yes. I was surprised because I was 15 and didn't have a license. I was surprised because I'd never driven in Chicago. I was surprised because, to her knowledge, I had never even driven alone before, so I was quick to take her up on the offer. I ran to the minivan, pulled up directions to the nearest CVS, and was on my way. The trip there was easier than I had expected. I even got parking right in front of the door. I spent $2 on a box of Mike and Ike's and started my way back to the hotel. As I got closer, I got a call from my cousin asking me where I was. I told her what I assumed to have been obvious. I was on my way back from getting candy. She laughed, probably thinking I was joking. But when I made it back to the hotel and was walking to my room, I saw my mom waiting in her pajamas in the hallway. She was in utter shock. This joyride was followed by several heated arguments, making me forget I even got the box of Mike and Ike's. While the lesson might appear blurry in this story, the biggest takeaway is to listen to those around you, because in my mom's famous words, it's the tone of the voice that really counts. So while I did learn a lesson, I also had a pretty solid evening and an even better story. While the legality and common sense portrayed in these situations may be questioned, I have come to the conclusion that life is not about the lessons you learn, but the experiences you have. I've learned many important lessons in my life that have shaped me into the person I am today, but it is the stories of past events which we will remember later on in our lives. And while people may argue with some of the choices I have made, I enjoy the spice that my interesting decision-making adds to my life. Thank you.
Our second speaker today is Barton Richey. Barton will be introduced by Ms. Brundage.
I'm a history teacher, so I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about a sophomore boy in a history class. His name was Bartonk. He sat right by the door, and boy, let me tell you, that's usually a bad sign. And yeah, the boy sometimes had to be reminded to settle down, stop talking, pay attention, get to work. And then something happened. He became the one reminding his classmates to stop talking, settle down, pay attention, and get to work. It turned out that the boy really liked learning, and he really, really liked challenging himself to do just a little better every day. Soon enough, the boy became a junior, and he took advanced art history because he liked learning and he liked challenging himself. He bounced into class every day with energy, enthusiasm, and good cheer. He gave the rest of us in that classroom a really wonderful gift. It turns out that in a pandemic year, there are some things that are highly contagious: energy, enthusiasm, and good cheer. He made us smile, he made us happy, he made us feel good. He only got his hand stuck in the cabinet handle of the door behind him once, that I know of. He brought cake. He got his sister to make it, but still, he brought cake. And he has no idea how many times last year he saved me. I'm so honored to be a part of his story. So now, for the next chapter, here's Barton.
I used to have an irrational fear of being late. Maybe it wasn't so much the fear of being late, but rather I always wanted to be first. First person in line, first person to arrive at a friend's birthday party, first person to arrive at soccer practice, first person to do pretty much anything. When I played HYR soccer in elementary school, I used to demand that my dad drop me off at practice a minimum of 10 minutes before it started. The car rides there were always hard. Me sitting there quietly, trying not to freak out when the light was red for just a little bit too long. I can only remember once when I was actually late to practice, and I thought that was going to be the end of my world. I dare say I was on the verge of tears as I half jogged, half walked to my team. To my surprise, nobody seemed to care that I was late. The whole experience should have been a substantial learning moment, but instead, I deemed it luck and did not change my ways. I continued to rush, always making a point to be ridiculously early. Flash forward to middle school, and not much had changed. My alarm was set for 6:45 a.m. I could be dressed, fed, teeth brushed, and out the door within 15 minutes of waking. I wanted to arrive at school by 7:15 a.m. at the latest. Half the time, I'd be dropped off at school before the lights in the basement had even been turned on. This resulted in a lot of waiting. I wanted things to happen quickly, and I needed to do whatever I did fast. I ate fast, I talked fast, I walked fast, I sped through my work, and I had trouble paying attention when people talked slowly. Every parent-teacher conference that I can remember circled around one major topic: me speeding through my work and how my grades would be so much better if I just slowed down and checked my work before turning it in. Now, I wholeheartedly agree with this because it makes sense. If you speed through your work, there's a larger margin for error. So, by going back and checking said work, I would hopefully be able to fix said errors. But did I listen? No. It was just too difficult for me to spend more time doing something that I already didn't like. No offense to middle school teachers, but it's just typical that middle school students don't like schoolwork. And these habits continued. As much as I tried to slow down, I just could not. Once in high school, I realized I've always been a hands-on learner. Looking for something that really forced me to slow down was a bit of a challenge. I had no idea what would help, but it turns out what I needed was something I'd already been doing: backpacking. Who would have thought? Hiking, camping, and backpacking in the woods have no connection to talking slower, checking through my work, or doing anything of the sorts. At least, that's what I thought. When I was backpacking, I was just enjoying the views and having a good time with friends. Now, looking back, I can see how this really helped me. At first, I spent so much time thinking about the big picture that I overlooked the smaller, more important aspects of the trip. When I first started, I was only focused on getting to the next campsite. So much so that I sped through my hike, and by the time I reached camp, I was hungry, exhausted, and bored. I tended to have trouble recalling what I'd seen on the hike because so much time was spent looking down and thinking about what was to come next. I hardly looked up and appreciated where I was at the moment. On my next backpacking adventure, I did a Knowles trip. Things were different. I spent hiking, the time spent hiking was an actual hike, not a rush to the next campsite. I appreciated the occasional scenic break or the spontaneous snowball fight at the summit of a peak. During Knowles, we would have layover days, where we stayed an extra night at camp. On one of these days, we took a day trip. We hiked out to see the world's largest western hemlock tree. I know, Very exciting. We spent most of the afternoon hiking to the tree. After we arrived, we linked arms to measure its size. After our excursion, we made our way back to camp and cooked backcountry pizza, which, and Jim can attest to, is absolutely delicious. The point of that short story was not to marvel you with the greatness of hemlock trees or backcountry pizza, but rather to show the contrast in my attitudes during these 2 trips. My activity had not changed. I was still backpacking, except now my focus has been geared towards slowing down and enjoying time spent doing something I love rather than speeding through it just to check it off the list. Backpacking itself was not the answer, only a guide that showed me what needed to change. If I strictly saw backpacking as the act of hiking through the woods, then I would have not enjoyed the little things. I would not have noticed a difference in the air I breathed or the friendships I made. I would have missed out on life itself. In all my rushing, I was not paying attention to life at the moment. Now, checking over work and backpacking are far from similar, yet all needed was proof that slowing down was possible. Having it shown to me through what I love was just my way of doing so. Whatever I do, there's a good chance I will still do it fast. But as long as the point of my actions are not lost and there is still meaning, then does it really matter? Do what makes you happy. Stop and see the world's largest Western hemlock tree and enjoy life thoroughly. I'm already making small changes. See, I did not sign up to be the first senior speech, but I can still be dressed, fed, teeth brushed, and out the door in under 15 minutes. Thank you.
Our third and final speaker of the day is Xander Scott. Xander will be introduced by Ms. Crawford.
Good morning. I have the distinct honor of introducing Xander Scott this morning. I mean, I know I'm the backup choice to Will, who wasn't supposed to be here, and here he is today. That's great, but I'll do my best. I remember distinctly 5 years ago when I heard about this new family coming to collegiate: squash, England, math placement, older brother, younger brother. I got to know Will pretty well, and I remember him talking about his little brother, telling stories that I couldn't really understand because of his accent and laughter. Then a couple years later, I had a ninth grade advisory, and I finally met Xander. Understated and humble, polite, kind, quick-witted, quick to laugh, hardworking and curious, charming and a bit of a heartbreaker, an amazing squash player. Xander is all these things and more. But there's something personal I want to share with you about Xander. He is one of the most generous and compassionate students I've ever taught. Last May, when I broke both of my elbows, Xander set up that meal train and put it on social media, and so many of you contributed to that. He got the word out. He checked in with me often, made sure I was well fed, wanted to know if I needed anything. I remain humbled and blown away by the outpouring of love and food and kindnesses from what Xander organized, and many of you contributed. So before Xander heads up to the North Country, close to Canada, St. Lawrence University, for his university years, we have this moment to hear from him. I, for one, cannot wait to hear what he has to say. Ladies and gentlemen, Xander Scott.
Everyone asked me one thing before my speech. Are you just going to talk about being British? And the short answer is yes. But not as much as that just gets boring. So instead of being like my older brother and writing a I'm boring, I'm British senior speech, I wanted to share some stories and experiences that have happened over the years. Most of the stories are about, you guessed it, squash. Squash has taught me so much that I will be able to value forever. My family has made everything possible for me in bringing squash into my life, but also to the collegiate community. There was lots of excitement in my family as we worked towards squash becoming a varsity sport at collegiate. Today, we have 4 new squash courts being built, teams going to nationals, and the ability for people to know what the sport is instead of just the vegetable. I value the team's jokes and banter that we have at practice, like Beckett not knowing where practice is or when practice is, or me rugby tackling certain members of the team as I'm too competitive and didn't want to lose to Mark and Jack. However, as fun as it is being able to both play on the team and coach, this would not have been possible without the help of my dad. My dad has taught me a style of coaching in which respect is the fundamental block to building relationships. With this, I've begun to be able to pass some wisdom and what I hope to be life lessons to the younger children. Not only teaching them squash, but helping them step into a position of leadership which they may not have been able to attempt before. And I bet when I say this, you have this picture of a small 8-year-old running around a squash court full of 6 kids absolutely perfectly with no problems, allowing me to sit off the back of the court sipping on a cup of tea and having biscuits. That would be lovely, right? Child prodigies swarming the courts and me not having to do anything. But in reality, this is not what happened. One day, I leave to use the bathroom for 1 minute, and when I come back to the course, I'm frozen, staring in awe at the war that had erupted while I was gone. All I see is the kids running in every direction away from one person who had one goal: to squash everyone to the ground. I rush in to stop the game. I then discover it has a name: Squishy Squash. Squishy Squash is a fabulous new game in which the person with the ball must squash anyone in sight to the ground. I was able to learn a lesson here in my early life of coaching: don't go leave a bunch of kids alone, ever. Even if you have to go to the bathroom, I had my own responsibilities. As much as we wish that life would be as easy as showing someone once and trusting them to accomplish something amazing every time, we must realize that our responsibilities and success may take longer to fulfill. Now for the 2 things that have defined me in the collegiate community. As I said, my brother somehow managed to dedicate an entire speech to this, the British portion. At least I can claim being the squash kid as my second defining trait. Growing up in England filled me with life-changing events which I would never have experienced in America. I was shaped by my surroundings in every possible way. Walking to and from school each day, I was able to spend time with my gran and family, which helped me develop many morals that I live by. Or to the time I felt my entire spine snap in half when my brother and cousin played crack the egg on the trampoline. I never cracked as the egg to lose the game, but my back sure did. Or the time when my brother was running around the house shouting, "He's dead, he's dead," after I passed out on the couch, unable to be awakened by British paramedics after a kid-sized footy ball smacked 6-year-old me in the face. I still can't remember the entire story. All I know is my brother and his rocket leg got off the hook, as it was my cousin who drop-kicked the footy ball into my face. Even though these may be some painful experiences, my British family has always shaped me into being the person that I am today. My grand's caring side always made me feel like I could choose whatever I wanted in life. My mum's inspirational words and advice calmed me down and showed me that something is possible. My dad and his brutal expectations and standards, which some of you have seen on the squash court, no, in all seriousness, he always pushed me to do my absolute best in whatever I wanted to pursue. And to my brother, Will. Well, for Will, I had to think a while about how he shaped me. And well, I couldn't think of much other than the fact that he made all the mistakes first, so I didn't have to. It's nice being the youngest in the family, if I do say so myself. I'm the angel child in everyone's eyes. Respect is another huge value that my family and I believe in. Respect is something that my friends struggle with, however, as all I ever hear is a cheesy fake British accent booming down the hallway at me. Imagine this. "Oi mate, you." Picture any British insult here and it will suffice. I think we all know who does this in an utterly disgraceful accent. Does it sound like respect to you? No. But I do understand. Most of the time, people don't have a clue what I'm on about, so in response, they just smile and nod at me. So when I get a group of 7-year-old kids looking blank at me on court like, "What on earth did he just say?" you have to either move on and respect how hard it may be for little kids to understand me, or spend the next 5 minutes trying to sound Southern. Now, after coaching multiple years and collegiate starting to fully embrace the squash community, I can't walk around the school without some small child looking up at me and saying, "Hey, Xander." This makes me feel like I've been able to leave some effect on the kids in which they feel comfortable enough to speak to me, instead of continuing their shy, usual quiet selves. So I would like to thank Collegiate for allowing me to become closer with the community this way as a respected British squash coach. Collegiate has made a major impact on my life and shaped me in ways I could never have imagined. So for that, I will be forever be grateful and thankful for the education, experiences, resources, and ability to do what I love. Make sure that you have the ability to recognize the people that shape you in your life, whether it's from someone almost killing you with a footy ball or to being provided with resources to make your dreams come true. So your responsibility is to respect and value those positive influences in your life. Thank you.
Well done, gentlemen. Let's give Barton, Grayson, and Xander another round of applause. Have a great Thursday, everybody.